Welcome to the Unstuck and Unstoppable Podcast, where we help you move your life forward. I'm so excited today that we are going to have a conversation about leadership with a man who is a leadership guru. I'm your host, Jimn Kyles, and if you want to know about leadership, you have joined the right episode of our podcast. Today we have Pastor Mark Quattrochi, affectionately known as PQ. He's the founding pastor of the chapel, a multi-generational, culturally diverse church in Trinity, Florida. He also hosts a podcast called Just Lead for active leaders who are making timely decisions in a dynamic marketplace. He's also had a 20-year career as Dove Award-winning producer and music industry executive. He's been married to his wife for more than 30 years. We are so glad to have you today. Welcome to the podcast, Mark.
Hey, Jim, so glad to be here. Super excited about talking about our subject today, being unstuck, and just so glad to be here.
Yeah, man, this is long overdue. You and I we've known each other for quite some time. And
I know it.
I am a fan of your podcast, and we're going to tell them more about it, the Just Lead podcast. You and I were talking about it even pre-show. So many great interviews and leadership truths, and I'm just excited to have your wisdom here, talking about leadership and life. And hey, speaking of life, you and I were talking, this man right here lost 17 pounds.
17 pounds. I'm pretty, as a matter of fact, if we could just talk about that the entire time, I'd be happy.
That's right.
Come on. It was the roughest 17-pound loss program ever. I mean, I'm Italian, so I love talking and I love eating and talking almost at the same time. So it was quite an achievement.
That would be fun to watch.
A little messy. A little messy.
Well, man, I'm so thrilled to have you. So many great things are happening. You know, your church, you guys just got into your new building a couple of years ago, bought a shopping center in the middle of COVID. Who does that?
Yeah, who does? That's exactly what we tell people all the time. You know, everybody had, a lot of things to go through, a lot of obstacles in a different way for everybody for COVID. Well, we had started before COVID, and then COVID hit in terms of construction. And then we just had to plow through it. Yeah. So it happened. I mean, a project that would have taken, 13 months, winded up taking 27.
Wow.
And keeping, like anything else, like leaders have to do, we had to keep people motivated, about the vision and keep them like, this is the desired future. And that became an obstacle for us too, because then you had the distraction of COVID. Yeah. But we've been this past November was 2 years. We've been in 2 years now. And we were fortunate enough. It was economically better for us to buy the entire shopping center than just to renovate the space that we would have been in. So we have 16 tenants that lease from us.
So smart. Well, it's one of the things that I love about you. You got so many great hats. And again, you and I have known each other, so it's not brand new. You're new to the audience that I get to host through the podcast, but yeah, I love it. So you're a pastor. I mean, you had a whole music career. It's like a whole nother lifetime. Yeah. You're entrepreneurial, businessman. We were talking about it. I mean, who not only buys and retrofits a building, but your cash flow in the building. I mean, my God, when you look at the ability, and that's not just anybody can walk into that. You saw opportunity where people might have seen a problem.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it was, and that's what we've, and we both have sat under some great leadership at the same time and currently do. And instead of seeing COVID as an obstacle, we saw it as an opportunity, including helping the tenants in the shopping center, saying, well, what if we did buy it? It's a little unconventional, for a church to do that. But for us, it's a little bit of the way we do ministry, a methodology. So it worked out looking at it differently. A lot of times the obstacles create a different perspective where it creates the opportunity. So for us, it was a different perspective because a lot of the tenants were having trouble and they needed really, I'm not saying necessarily even my leadership, but they needed leadership for them to see, hey guys, you can be on the other side of this in maybe even a better position. Wow. So it was really from a leadership standpoint, it worked out not only economically, but it worked out leadership wise too.
Absolutely. Well, tell me this, you're talking about sometimes we see there's either this option or that option. Sounds like you're talking about almost like a third option. It's the ability to take some steps back and say, hey, we can't solve this problem conventionally or in normal ways. So how do we come up with a solution?
Right. Right. I mean, and I think that's what I mean by exactly right. That's what I mean. So a lot of times the obstacle creates a different perspective because it's the obstacle.
Right.
Typically, we would solve it by doing X, Y,
Right.
whereas COVID created such an angst in all of us in no matter what profession you're in. It forced us, it forced us to have a new perspective, which then gave way to like, oh, well, actually, there's an opportunity on the other side.
That's right. Well, let me ask you this. I mean, I'm sure
Yeah.
over the last couple of years and even through the project, tell me a time when you really felt stuck, where it's like, man, I'm not sure. And then how did you get
Yeah.
unstuck? How did you figure that out?
There are maybe I shouldn't say this, but there were actually several stuck moments for me. And when I think of being stuck, I immediately think of like being in a rut.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And for me, what winds up happening is if I'm in a rut, I mean, we all know what a rut is a pattern. It's a continued pattern in the same direction over and over.
Yeah.
What I have to do, as a matter of fact, you've talked about this in your book, Unstuck, Unstoppable. And for me, it was chapter 6 in the book. And I hope everybody gets a copy of the book, by the way. It was for me, chapter 6 resonated because you have a phrase in the book that says a lot of times things that make us stuck aren't necessarily external, but it's internal things.
That's right. It's not what happens to you that matters the most. It's what happens in you.
Exactly. And for me, when I'm stuck, and the situation was this, during COVID, we're trying to open the building. You can only keep people excited for so long. We know this. And we kept delaying because the workforce, clearly the workforce was getting sick. Right. And I'm not making a political statement, but we're in Florida.
Yeah,
so Florida was a lot more of an open state comparative to everything else, but we still had workforce problems.
Right.
So I'm ready to strap on a tool belt and hang drywall, which would have been scary in itself. But I'm just like, we got to get this done. And where I felt stuck was because the external things I couldn't control, workforce, COVID, were actually dictating and controlling my desires.
Wow.
And it was for me, and like you, because we know each other, man, we like to go get it. We like to get it done. And what created this massive, and I don't want to over exaggerate, but it was a massive frustration for me, was things that I could not control were now controlling the things that I desired. Wow. And it just flat out made me mad.
Wow.
And the reason why chapter 6 resonated with me was because I had to go inside me and go, man, how do I get out of this rut? It was the same thing. No one showing up for work. Wow. This guy was sick. We had supply chain issues. Nobody wants to, then permitting, then the government, the county shut down. Well, then we had the workers, but they couldn't coincide. It was a nightmare. Wow. Well, I had to go in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. So tell me that. So you go in, what ended up, how did you get out of that?
Right. What I did for me, and again, maybe some of the listeners will resonate with this, but I had to go in and evaluate what were the things that were bringing me joy, because the things that were frustrating me, I had no control over.
Right.
So the things that were I kind of go through like my relationships. And I made sure that the relationship that would bring me joy, a friendship, or, maybe somebody in my family, I made sure they were on my calendar.
Wow. Yeah.
Music.
So you're staying full with the things you can control.
Exactly right.
You're leading out of a deficit, and then you're frustrated and you're not full. Right. Now you feel not only stuck, you begin to feel hopeless. And I can't deal with that or address that, but I can fill this up. And
exactly right. And I busted the pattern. So let's say, like for me, would be, let's say my sister who makes me laugh. She's goofy. I didn't have built in a pattern of talking to her, but being stuck as a result of a pattern, a rut. So what I did is I'm going to talk to her every 4-6 days.
Wow. Yeah.
And it creates, same thing with music. Music means a lot to me, like it does everybody. It speaks to my soul. Well, I didn't have a regimen. I'd listen to music here and there, and still enjoy it. But what I did is I made it a new pattern, a new routine where I started my day with like 30 minutes worth of music.
Wow. So it sounds like you're introducing things that you didn't have to introduce before,
right,
so that you could proactively address where you're at right now. So
exactly.
in other words, what I did to get here is not going to be what I need to do to get out of here.
Exactly right. And that was hard because I kind of liked where I was. I was just so mad that I couldn't listen. I hate to say it, but I was so mad that the thing that was keeping me from what I wanted most, I couldn't control.
Yeah, absolutely.
And look, that's what, a lot of times that's how we react as leaders, and forget about whether right or wrong. It's just the reality of it. But I just went to, hey, if being stuck is a result of maybe sometimes being in the same pattern or a rut, I just created new patterns, but they were things that spoke to me internally. Like, I know this is goofy, but for us, and we know because we're people of faith, laughter does, a soul good. It's good medicine.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I actually made it a point during the construction phase where I was stuck. I made it a point to find, because laughter, I enjoy laughing, I enjoy having a good time, where I would find comedians that I've never heard to or whatever. And I had to watch. Some of them can get crass and weird, but I had to build a new pattern of just watching something that made me laugh.
Oh yeah. You know who my favorite comedian? Have you ever heard the guy Fluffy?
Yes. Is he from Texas?
I think so. Well, I think so. I don't even know, but I just know he makes me laugh. That man is
absolutely hilarious. For me, being Italian, it's Sebastian Maniscalco.
Okay.
And so I had heard of him before because he makes a lot of like Italian family jokes. But so I went,
you're like,
he's talking about my dad right now or my mom, But what I had to do is I did a deep dive on all of his Netflix specials and everything. And I just became a massive fan because at that time I was creating a new pattern. Wow. But that's why chapter 6 to me, for me, I mean, the whole writing, the whole book, Jim, is incredible. But for me, chapter 6, it was like, man, I understand what the insides, how it affects, everything going on in the outside. So it was pretty incredible. Yeah.
Now, you said you love music. You started listening to music. Tell me, I'm just wondering in my mind, 30 minutes of music. Give me your top 3 that you're
this is not a good. We're going to edit. You're going to want to put this in the editing bay when we're done. So I listen to a lot of different things. Like
that's all right. I mean, hey, unpolished baby.
Eclectic, right. But I would definitely like listen to Rage Against the Machine, and there's no doubt about it. Because listen, I was angry. I was upset, so it helped a little bit. But I will say in there, I'm a little classic. I'm an older guy, so I'm a classic rock guy. I listen to a lot of Billy Joel, listen to Def Leppard. But I do listen to things that calm me, which for whatever reason, instrumental piano hymn music calms my spirit. Yeah. I'm not advocating. So for our podcast listeners, I'm not advocating those artists. I'm just saying at that moment.
Yeah. Well, I love it too, because you felt the expression of, and here's the reality. Right. When we say what works, it's, or what do we do? It's what works. Yeah. It got you through.
Exactly right.
That.
I had to do it. Yeah.
You've been bragging on my book, but I just want to go back to your podcast. I mean, you've got some amazing principles, and honestly, candidly, I'm always honest, but candidly, man, I just find myself scrolling. You had a guy, Todd Hopkins, on there.
Yeah.
I think, was he like the chief visionary officer of, what was it?
Office Pride.
Yeah. And I just found it so fascinating, some of the things that you guys were even talking about, and the distractions and busyness. And I mean, I'm telling you, the other day, I must have spent 20 minutes scrolling through your podcast, because the thing I love about it, especially on the one on Instagram, I'm gonna brag on that, is they're just quick nuggets. In fact, I'm gonna tell on myself, I actually taught one of your nuggets, and I taught it like I stole it. In other words, didn't say nothing. That's great.
Yeah.
So
That's so
good.
funny, which we all do it, by the way.
Yeah.
Everybody, whoever says they don't do that, they're already guilty of just lying. So just fess up and we all do it. Give me a break. Nothing new under the sun. Trust me. Yeah.
So good. Well, and so here's my question to you. Tell me this. You've got, was it 100 episodes? I mean, you've been rocking.
Yeah. We've been
Tell
doing
me-
it for a little while. Yeah.
Tell me a couple of things that you've learned that are like, man, those were pivotal things that I learned as we were interviewing and doing the podcast. Give me maybe two or
Yeah.
three.
Well, I think for what we realized is, because we know each other, and you and I, and we want to do everything well. We use the word excellent. We want to do that, and so a lot of times, what I found is I want to organize it, I want to structure it, I want it to be produced. And by the way, all those things are awesome. But what I found for what we were doing, the style of what we're doing was, hey man, there's got to be a level of chemistry that was happening because I'm trying to bottle lightning.
Right.
And a lot of times, like, you can't structure and organize lightning. It just flashes and you got to bottle it.
Right.
Now, the preparation, got to have it and everything. So I started to overvalue too much the production side and forgot the value of, man, if there's a chemistry and there's a vibe happening with a guest, that stuff, the bottling lightning, is the stuff that people were like, oh, that was cool. But we spent an hour getting the lighting right. Nobody's doing that.
Right. No, in fact, there's that whole movement. It's almost like it looks like it was intentionally bad, and those are getting millions of views, and they don't want it produced.
I know. And I'm an older guy, so what happens is, I feel good because you put that sweat equity into production. And I don't want to say that preparation of course is important, and we got all that, but leave room for the spontaneity and the bottle lightning. We definitely learned that over doing over 100 episodes.
Oh, that's huge. Give me another thing. What's something else? What's a leadership thing that you learned?
What the leadership I learned was actually on the episode that you mentioned. Was from Todd, about how he was hiring people, and he said a line which was probably about 6 months ago, but he said, if I hire someone who knows it all, then I've got the best of them already.
Wow.
I listen, because we have to edit stuff, because I'll laugh, I gotta go to the bathroom, I gotta get out, we'll edit. I had to stop.
Wow.
Because you've done this with your guests. They say something and it's just a stopper. And I went, what? And then of course, our producer, Brad, he said, no, talk about it. So then I had asked him, I go, what? Well, tell us more about that, Todd. Meanwhile, I'm sweating and crying because I just felt like somebody showed me sliced bread for the first time. And he goes, no, if they know it all, then they're not learning. So what is in front of me is already the best I'm going to get.
Wow.
Are you kidding me?
That is powerful.
And we might have heard that like in different phraseology or whatever, but the way he says it, even today, like repeating it, I'm like, my gosh, what a nugget. And I'm now looking like you are, when hiring, how teachable,
right?
How moldable, pliable is this person in front of me? Although they have a great resume and they have a ton of experience, but am I going to get more out of them? Like, horsepower or wisdom and I just thought the way he phrased it, of course, over, 150 franchises and all across the country, and
he's got a few things to teach. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, yeah. So that was really cool.
So here we are, we find someone, we think, I've got the best of them. They're a know-it-all. Were there any indicators that were clear, red flags? This is the words that they use, the phrase, this is how you identify. I know the teachability, I think we can sniff that out, but sometimes I think you've got people that have that mindset, but they're good at hiding it a little bit better.
Exactly right.
If there was anything that we could identify.
For me, what I've seen that's a red flag, I like the blinking red light on the dashboard kind of thing, is when I'm talking to somebody that I'm thinking about hiring, and they're not inquisitive enough to ask about someone else's accomplishments.
Wow.
So in other words, Jim and his staff, just opened up a building, and I want to know, hey man, how did it go? What was like you're asking me, where was the stuck moments? Where were you? When there's not a level of being inquisitive about someone else's accomplishments that you could maybe, because you being inquisitive means I want to learn something from that. So when I'm interviewing somebody and they talk about, wow, your organization's really grown over the 5 years, and they go, hey, so let me tell you what college I went to, and breeze over it. Oh, it's a red flag for me.
Yeah,
because they're not inquisitive enough to want to learn. And I'm like, man, they might be that this is the best in front of me. You know what I mean? I just always see that.
So have you found yourself, so that happens and you find someone on your team, is that a coachable thing, or is that something that you found, like, how would you address it? I find someone I've identified, now maybe they're stuck on your team. What are you doing? How do you take a next step? What are the paths?
Yeah, what I have identified someone like that, because they'll be to me, they'll interviewing with me, and I'll just go, hey guys, I'm not. This is a big enough, bright enough, big enough red light on the dashboard, so no. And then we've had staff members that over time, for whatever reason, stopped learning, stopped being inquisitive or whatever. Man, we do something called a 45-day health plan.
Wow.
Sometimes 30, sometimes 60, and we go, hey man. In so many words. Now I'm from Brooklyn, so it could be, I don't want to come off crass, but I just go, hey man, you're on the bubble. But I really do believe you can overcome X, Y, and Z, but here is X, Y, and Z. And if not in the allotted time, 30, 60, never 90, 90 is way too long for us. I'm just saying for us.
Sure.
And one of them is this, man, you don't seem, we have a phrase called lean in. You don't seem to be leaning in on whatever those things are. You don't seem to be interested in things outside of your scope of responsibility. So it's making you incredibly myopic instead of global. And what it's doing is it's narrowing your influence and your impact.
Oh, that's good.
That won't cut it here.
Oh, that's good.
And so we get a little, we just had it happen, about 6 months ago. I hated it, but it's authentic. I really believe this person had a ton of potential, but that potential will never be realized if you're not inquisitive, if you're whatever those, X, Y, Z things are. Potential doesn't mean nothing. It's left on the table. Right. So, we just have that candid, and I got to tell you, 75, 80% of the time it works out.
Wow.
But there is that 20% that, man, we did the best we could.
Yeah.
They're good people. Jim, you know that. They're good people.
They
They're
just hit their ceiling, and
that's
you're in a place. Well, that's where I think high-performing teams.
Right.
I'm rereading a book called Good to Great. I know you know it, Jimn Kyles.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
It's very
so good.
Fascinating. Coming out of COVID, we're all trying to get that mo back.
Right.
And we have a little bit of an unfair advantage having a building that gives us something people are coming to that's brand new. People were built buildings, rehab buildings. But I thought it was very interesting as I'm looking through that whole plan of disciplined people, which is part of what he talks about. I found it fascinating that he talks that people who are in good or great companies, if from the outside, it's interesting how they can look like a toxic place to work. Mm-hmm. And he goes in and he says this, it's not that they're ruthless, they fire people and they're not trying to make people's lives difficult. He says rather they're rigorous in ensuring the best people are in the best positions. And I love that about you, because it's that 45-day. You said no 90. Well, what that means is, hey, I'm rigorous. We're growing fast, and I don't have 3 months. I got a month and a half, and in that time, there's enough time for me to identify: have you reached your cap? Or do you have something in to go further?
Yeah.
And it sounds to me like you value the vision, what God's doing in the organization.
Yeah. And first of all, what a
Isn't that
great
powerful?
Quote. What a great quote.
Because how many times could you be called toxic? And if you're insecure or you're unsure, you could say, well, I accept that label, but it's like, I don't accept the label.
Exactly. And let me tell you where that burned me, Jim, was in previous leadership positions, not in the one I'm in now, is I let something go a long time. let's say the 90 or 120. Oh, okay, because I had so much faith in them, and which
Right.
good, healthy leaders have faith and vision for their people, even beyond the vision they may have for themselves. We get that. Okay.
Right.
But I let it go so long. What it winded up doing with the other staff members was it eroded my credibility as a leader, because it was almost like, does he not see this?
Right.
Does he not know this isn't a fit?
Right.
Does he not? And that's when you talk about toxicity. It wasn't even that person being toxic. It was my inability
Wow.
to kind of act swiftly, fairly, now still act fairly, but swiftly enough to where it didn't erode my own credibility as a leader.
Wow.
And so it hurt me bad.
Well, that's powerful. Let me ask you this, so say you're in a place where you find someone and you're in this limbo. How do you let them go once you've identified they're not the right person, they've hit the cap?
Yeah.
Here's a question I would ask you, and if I'm listening, I'd be thinking about is the quickness, the speed of action matters, but do you let them go before you have a replacement, or do you wait till you have a replacement?
I always judge. What a great question. I always judge that based on the level of influence they have in the organization, or the level of influence they have with customer facing opportunities.
Wow.
So if they're a little bit more of a backroom, although important and influential,
right.
if they're backroom, you know what I mean? I may let them go quicker, and everybody pick up a little slack, bonus people, and do that way. But if they're customer facing and they're out in front, unless they are just so toxic and hurting the people, I'll ease it around until I can find the replacement. So I'm simultaneously removing and replacing at the same time.
Wow. Yeah.
Because the impact, or what I like to say, the ripple effect, is a little bit greater on the front-facing, higher visible, influential employees than the back room. They're all important.
Right.
They're all influential, but that's the way I've done it, and it served me well. I think people enjoy knowing, it didn't work out with John, but let me tell you, he's done a great job. It's wonderful. His time is ending, but I'm super excited about Steve, who begins his job with us March 1st. Man, before you know it, people are like, really? I didn't. What's this guy, Steve? He does what? Oh, well, that's exciting. I mean, and I hate to be that way, but that's part of what we do as leaders is we preserve the DNA for a healthiness, not toxicity,
That's right. Well, and that's the key, and I love it. I love it's the remove and replace. We've learned around some of the best leaders, and that's the thing, man. We're going to celebrate your exit, but I'm excited about their entrance.
Exactly right.
And here's what I also have found, and I know you've seen this. People aren't as important as they think they are.
Yeah.
So sometimes they can feel like, well, I'm the reason this is, what it is.
Right.
And it's always fascinating to me. Now we're in the church business, not business, but we're in church. And so for us, we always look at God loves his church. And it's amazing to me to see how, really what they enjoyed and loved was what we built, the culture, the mission, the values. It's all the things. So if all of that is healthy, the transition's impact is not as deep as sometimes we are even afraid of. I don't know about you, but sometimes I'm like, is it going to be?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's painful. And then we've been doing it long enough. I always kind of look and laugh. No matter how good you do it, somebody's still going to say you did it wrong.
Exactly right.
So let's get it right in the organization.
Right.
And here's our litmus test, and I know it's yours. I just want to be able to stand up with integrity and say, I did it right. Like in my heart, regardless of what's, wow.
And that goes back to what we were saying, act fairly, but also swiftly is the ability to say to people in front of people, whatever they are, whether it's a board of trustees or a congregation or your employees, whatever it is, to go, hey, we did everything we felt we could to save this person's employment. We've done everything, we because we're leaders of faith, the above reproach. I really did do everything. Maybe some leaders would have cut them off in 14 days and gave them a week's salary, but we try to be generous. We try to be, very fair, but it's the ability to say to others, hey man, we really did do everything we could to keep this person, part of the DNA and being healthy rather than being, an albatross kind of vibe.
Absolutely. Well, let me ask you this. So I'm just thinking about the business
Yeah.
person, the entrepreneur, the manager, the leader. They find that they've got someone that's reached their cap. What would you say the steps are? Give us a couple of steps as we start to wrap
Yeah.
this up. Give me, it seems like this is where the podcast is going. So
Yeah.
what would you say? Okay.
Yeah.
I think this person they've reached the cap. They're unteachable. Give me a couple of steps to help me get unstuck in that area.
Yeah. I mean, with all things being equal, because we're all going to face it.
Right.
And I know you faced it. We're all going to face it, especially for in organizations that are healthy and growing. People are going to hit their lid.
Right.
All things being equal, meaning they love the organization, they resonate with the DNA, but man, they're just not. I actually go to them and go, man, tell me what's burning on your heart. Tell me tell me what's getting you up in the morning. I mean, I'm going to take my CEO hat off. I'm going to take my lead pastor hat off. Just talk to me about, and sometimes what I have found is sometimes they actually mention things, bring things to the foreground that actually further the vision. But sometimes it was the job description or the team they're on that spoke to their limit.
Wow.
And so just asking the question causes them to go, oh, I was thinking this. But if there's nothing, I know this sounds crazy, but if they go, man, I don't know, I'm just kind of doing my gig right now. I'm doing my job. I go, yeah, that gives me the in, right? That gives me the in to go, yeah, I'm getting kind of concerned because that's not sustainable.
So good.
So I kind of win both ways.
Oh, no, you absolutely do. Well, it sounds like, and let me just, what I'm hearing you to say is sometimes people may even become a little unteachable because they're not in the right spot. It's like they hit a cap and not an unteachable, but it's like, I'm not interested. There's no passion. There's no desire. Because we know teachability comes from the desire to want more.
Exactly right.
So it sounds like you put them in the right spot. It's like, whoo, I come back alive.
Right.
I love what Maxwell said. He said, I stopped trying to, John Maxwell, great leadership guru, this guy, he kind of writes a few books.
Yeah. Every once in a while he writes a book.
What did he say? I stopped trying to motivate people and started finding people who were motivated.
Yeah.
Some of that is in the passion lane. Like if I got you in the wrong lane, coming alive and, anyway, and then the others, of course, if they're then they're not even interested. It's like, well, I'm gonna help you.
Exactly. And what you find, and it's really hard, if not impossible.
Yeah.
And maybe some of our listeners have done it, but man, I don't know if you can teach passion.
No.
It's like, for us, if you have somebody who's a facilities director, but they're not passionate about the house or the building or the facility being the best presentation of what's happening in our organization. I can't teach that passion. So you're trying to, and we know this. So you try to manufacture passion for them, and then it takes energy away from me and my calling or what God has called me to, or my gift or purpose in the organization. And I'm worn out just trying to manufacture passion for him or her.
Yeah.
And that's killer.
Oh, it's devastating. Yeah. Then you're drained emotionally, every aspect of your life. You're like,
listen, that is exactly what happened like 6 months ago. Listen, Jim, I love this guy. Tons of potential. And I was going, hey man, I'd see him in the hallway. I was like, hey man, what's up? How was the other night? He had to get together with his leaders. How was it? And he was like, yeah, it was cool. It was good. And I'm like, did it go good? And I'm not saying everybody's got to talk with their hands and be Italian. I'm not saying although it'd probably help you if you were. I'm just saying.
Oh, absolutely.
But not everybody has to be. I'm just saying, just be passionate in something. And that's when I knew, oh wow, we've got to. There's someone like Jim would say, Jimn Kyles in his book, he's not only in the wrong seat on the right bus, he's on the wrong bus in the wrong seat.
That's right.
And that's when I knew we really had to hone in, that kind of thing.
My brother, he has a great saying, and he is such a great business, just entrepreneurial and leader. But he says it like this. He says, there's a spot for you. It's just not here.
Exactly.
So what you're doing right there, there's a place for that.
Yeah,
but it's
exactly.
not here doing what we're doing. We're changing the world. We're expanding. We're growing. We're making an impact. And
exactly right.
That doesn't fit here. So,
No, for sure. Yeah.
well, that's so good, man. I have so
Mhm.
enjoyed our conversation, and I just
Absolutely.
want to encourage people to go and check out your podcast. In fact, tell them so they're listening, they're watching. Well, how do they go check it out? How do they go find you and learn
Yeah.
more about what you're doing?
Right. They can find it on any platform where you would listen to your any podcast on, Spotify, Apple Music, or anything like that. It's out there everywhere that you can find it on the shelves at Walmart. That's not true. I'm just kidding. But anywhere you listen to podcasts, anywhere where you listen to your podcast, Jim, you know what I mean? They can find Just Lead.
That's right.
What we love about it is taking situational leadership issues or conversations or problems and trying to, through the resources and the people that we know, try to help people solve them from a healthy leadership standpoint. So we have a lot of fun, and we talk about food.
Yeah.
Too.
Well,
important.
food and leadership doesn't get much better than that.
What else do you want?
What else do you want? Well, I tell you, you bless me, and it has been such a joy to have you on the podcast today. And I'm just so excited to continue to learn from you, glean from you, be a friend and a resource.
Yes, absolutely.
So
love what you
grateful.
guys are doing there in Texas.
Yeah, Texas.
My
Richmond,
wife is from Texas, so she was excited I was going to be on your podcast today. So I'll tell her
That's
all
right.
about it. She was like, "Tell them I said hello."
Yeah,
because all
well,
you Texans are like a gigantic cult.
I'm telling
You
you
know what I
what,
mean? Everybody's got to
Tennessee,
stick together.
That's right, man. We're ready for anything. That's why
That's
everybody keeps
right.
moving here. Texas
That's
and Florida.
exactly right. Well, man, it's great to see you. Good
So
talking to
good.
you, Jim.
Yeah. Well, and if you enjoyed the podcast today, here's what I'm going to ask you to do. Would you invite someone to join us? Share it with someone that may enjoy this conversation, learn from this conversation. Also, I want to invite you to subscribe wherever it is that you consume the content. If you'll subscribe, it will come straight to wherever it is, whether it's YouTube, Spotify, Apple. Every week we release new episodes. Would love to give you resources to equip you to become unstoppable and get unstuck. And then last, would you review it? If you enjoy it, would you just give us a review? It always helps us in the rankings. And if you're interested in my book, Chapter 6 of what Mark talked about and all of it, helping you get unstuck, become unstoppable, you can go to jimmkyles.com and get a copy. You can also go to Amazon and get a print copy. You can get an Audible version or a digital version. And would love to come alongside of you in your life and help you in any way possible. Until next time, keep moving your life forward. Bye-bye.
That's right.